Welcome back to the Modest Mushroom. Today's video I am very excited to share with you guys because I am going to be making both two different recipes from the Disney movie Princess and the Frog. In the movie, Tiana's big thing is making gumbo and her famous beignets. So we're going to be making both of those in this video today. I'm going to start by showing you how she makes her gumbo. I looked up like an authentic New Orleans gumbo recipe to do this, and then I added Tiana's secret ingredient, which is Tabasco, which I just showed in that scene there. So the first thing we're going to do to get started making the recipe is we're going to make our own chicken broth from scratch. So I have a rotisserie chicken here, and I'm just going to get all of the chicken off of the bone, and we're going to put the chicken aside to use in the gumbo later when we make it. I'm doing this a few days ahead of time so that I just have it ready to go when I'm ready to make the gumbo. So after you get pretty much all of the meat off of there, we're going to take the bones from the rotisserie chicken, and just a little bit of the meat and skin in there, put it in a crock pot or some kind of soup pot or something, and then add about, I think I added like 6 or 7 cups of water. Just a bit of seasonings. I just did onion and garlic. I didn't add any salt because I want to be able to add salt to the gumbo later on. And then I just let it stew in there for about 3 to 4 hours. Let it cool down, and then I put it in jars and put it in the fridge until I was ready to use it. Now we're on the day where I'm actually going to be making the gumbo, and I'm just showing you all of the ingredients we're going to be using. So I've got some shrimp that haven't been cooked yet, some andouille sausage, Cajun seasoning, vegetable oil and flour for the roux, a green bell pepper, a sweet onion, 2 bunches of green onions, a bunch of parsley. We're going to be using about 3 cloves of garlic, and then 1 whole package of celery. And then we also have our stock and our chicken, which is in the fridge and already ready to go. So I'm just gonna get started by thawing out the shrimp so that I can cook it before we put it in the gumbo pot. We want it like most of the way cooked, but I'm just gonna leave it like slightly undercooked before I add it into the gumbo. And so I'm just gonna soak that in some cold water for a little while I get started on cutting up my veggies. Now we're finally done cutting up all those veggies, which I will admit took me a lot longer than it looks in the video because I sped it up a lot. But I'm going to get started on cooking the meats, and then after that we'll get started on the roux, which admittedly does take a long time, but it is definitely worth it. Like, it was a pain in the butt, I will give you that, but it was definitely worth it. That is what gives the gumbo like the authentic gumbo flavor. And so this is just kind of the easy part right now. But I'm just going to get these shrimp cooked most of the way, and then I'm just going to set them aside until I am actually ready to put them in the soup. And then I'm going to get my sausage cut up and throw it in the fridge. And then I will explain why the roux is so difficult. Okay, so now it's time to get started on the roux. I'm going to be using 2/3 of a cup of the vegetable oil for this, and then to that I'm going to be adding a heaping cup of flour. That's what it said to do in the recipe, but I actually ended up adding an extra 1/2 cup of flour altogether. In the recipe it says that it should take about 30 to 40 minutes of constant whisking like this to make sure that it doesn't burn. I've got it on like medium heat, but it actually ended up taking me like an hour and 10 minutes to actually finish this because I didn't have enough flour in there. And so I knew something was wrong once I hit 30 minutes and it still looked this exact same color. So if it's as runny as mine is when you're trying to do this, just add in a little bit more flour at a time. And then it should have about the consistency of like the recipe says it should be kind of like a cookie dough that looks like chocolate. That's how it described it. I feel like it looks kind of more like a chocolatey peanut butter kind of thing when I was done with it. You'll see at the end of the clip here, but yeah, it did take a long time. I think it'll be a lot faster next time I make this though, because now I know what it's supposed to look like and I know what I did wrong. So yeah, this was about when it was finally almost done, and it was smelling so good by this point. It had like a nutty kind of smell. Now that we're done with the hardest part, which is the roux, we're going to move on with the rest of making the gumbo. So I'm going to start by cooking the sausage in a pan, and once it's browned nicely, I'm going to put in just a little bit of our chicken broth to deglaze the pan. I used a nonstick pan, so this was kind of a mute point for me, but I did get kind of some of the sausage like juices out when I did that. And then if you have a Dutch oven, that's what you're supposed to use for this recipe. I ended up using my crock pot though, because I actually tried to buy a Dutch oven specifically to make this recipe, and like the one that I bought had a huge crack, so I had to return it. So I'm just using my like giant crock pot that I have, and that ended up working out perfectly. So I'm just gonna get started by sauteing the veggies in here. I have about 3 cloves of garlic, and I'm sauteing that in a little bit of butter. And then here's the sausages all done. I'm just gonna set those aside in a bowl for now, and then we'll put in the chicken stock. And then once the garlic has been cooking for a couple of minutes, I'm gonna dump in the rest of our veggies, aside from the parsley, which I'll add after they've been sauteing for like a couple minutes. And then once they are like pretty well sauteed, we don't need them like super cooked or anything, then we will start adding in about 5 or 6 cups of our chicken stock that we made. Now we're going to start adding in the liquid portion. I added in the sausage juice chicken stock mixture that we made, and I also added in the parsley at this step. And the veggies are about done sauteing, so I'm going to add the chicken stock now. I added about 6 of these jars, and each jar is like 1.5 cups. So I added more liquid than the recipe calls for, because I knew it was going to simmer for a while in the crock pot. Feel free to add less or more, but we're going to add the roux in now as well. And I would recommend doing this with a whisk because it does kind of make chunks when it's first going in, and you really want to make sure that's stirred in well. So I whisked it for a while to make sure all those lumps and stuff were out. And once we finish this, we can go ahead and start adding in our meat. So the shrimp, the sausage, and the chicken from the rotisserie chicken. And once we're done with that, we are pretty much near the end of it. I'm going to season it after that with the Cajun seasoning, a bit of salt, and Tabasco Tabasco sauce, which is Tiana's secret ingredient. And I didn't put as much Cajun seasoning and Tabasco sauce as I would have liked in this, just because I wanted my daughter to be able to eat it, and she really doesn't like spicy stuff that much. So when my husband and I actually got our bowls of it, then we added more Cajun seasoning and Tabasco sauce, and it was really, really good. I would highly recommend this, but yeah, it's you kind of want to tone down the Cajun seasoning and stuff if you have kids who are kind of picky with spicy stuff. And then I'm just gonna let it simmer in there for about another 45 minutes or so while I make the rice, and then we are ready to eat. So this is the finished product here, and if you are a person like my husband and you've never had gumbo before, I understand it might not look that appetizing, but it was so good. I was surprised my daughter actually liked it, and my husband said he really liked it a lot too, and I grew up eating gumbo, so it just brought back so many fond memories for me. So here I am adding a little bit more Tabasco, and then we are going to sit down and eat it. And for dessert, I am making Tiana's famous beignets. So I'm going to walk you through that recipe as well. We're going to get started with 3 cups of flour and 1.5 teaspoons of salt in a bowl, and then I'm going to mix that up and set it aside. And then we're going to start heating up 1 cup of milk in a small saucepan on the stove, and I'm going to get that up to about 180. And then we are going to add that to 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of brown sugar in a mixing bowl. I used a KitchenAid mixer. If you don't have one of those, a hand mixer is fine too. Now we added in the hot milk to the butter and sugar, and then after it cools down to about 115 degrees, because we don't want to kill the yeast, I'm going to add in 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast and let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to whisk in 1 egg, and I'm also adding 1 teaspoon of vanilla here. Make sure that's whisked up well, and then we can go ahead and start adding the flour mixture into here. I'm going to start with a paddle attachment just until it's combined, and then after that I'm going to switch to a dough hook. If you don't have one of these, once you get it mixed up like that, you can just take it out and knead it by hand as well. Once the dough has been kneaded and it looks smooth like that, we're going to go ahead and put it in a bowl that has been oiled or greased, and then I'm going to cover it with some plastic wrap and let it rise for about an hour at room temperature. And when it is done rising, then we're going to go ahead and flour a surface, and I'm going to roll it out to 1/4 of an inch thick. And then it says you can kind of cut it however you like. I cut mine into like square rectangles, but you can also cut it into triangles as well. Some of mine kind of ended up as triangles too, and those were really cute, so it turns out great either way. Once you have them cut up however you wanted to cut them, we're going to grease a couple of cookie sheets and then You need to lay them out on the cookie sheets and cover them with some plastic wrap, and then they need to rise for about half an hour to another hour before we fry them. And once they're ready to fry, I'm going to heat up some oil in a large pan, and then I pretty much did them only in like batches of 3 mostly. They cook very quickly, so make sure you keep a close eye on them. And I believe the recipe said to cook them for about 2 minutes, flip them, cook them on the other side, and then take them out. But as the oil got hotter, the ones toward the end cooked very quickly. When they're done cooking, just put them on a plate with some paper towels to make sure you get any excess grease off. And then after they've been cooling for a couple of minutes, we can dust them with some powdered sugar. And then after that, they are ready to serve, and they are best when they're fresh and warm. I also served mine with a side of melted white chocolate chips, and I have to say that combo was like phenomenal. This is like one of my new favorite desserts. It was so good. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video today. Make sure to check out my channel for more cooking and baking videos like this, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.